Hey, what's up everyone? Today I'm going to be talking about the physical body, how to free up a certain area by working somewhere else in the body. It's a little counterintuitive, but that comes from my experience and from working with other experts who agree with me. And this is going to be showing you how to work with your own body, how to free it from restrictions. And I'm also going to be doing like a physical strengthening in these videos from now on, just a little short one. So I'm going to be strengthening something for you. You just connect to it. It's the intention that matters, and it'll strengthen your body. So if you think that sounds interesting, you should definitely watch this video. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the hips and the excuse me, the hips and the shoulders, and I'm going to be explaining how it's kind of, those are the two major hubs of the body. They're the glutes and the hips are the biggest muscles around the body, and also we have these shoulders that especially in say elite sport like soccer, no one really looks at when they're working with an athlete. They usually go down to the knees and the feet and the hips to work on footballers, and how this is very limited in understanding of the body, right? So a story that I remember from my days back in Chelsea, there was one football player, Frank Lampard, who was having a thigh problem. And it's funny when I talk about different players like this, I don't normally like to say names, just because you never know if it's the right thing to do to talk about a story. But this is really, lots of players had injuries at the time. He had a thigh injury, and so we were looking at the medical team. We were looking for ways to come up with solutions to find out what was going on. I remember the physio at the time was saying that. I remember clearly the player had gone to see this osteopath, a French osteopath who's really good, and he's highly rated. Still, I think he's still working with soccer players now, like all the best. He's a French osteopath, a really nice guy as well. And he was, his assessment was there was something going on with the shoulder, and it wasn't loading correctly, and it was up here, and the physio just scoffed at it. He was like, he thinks it's something to do with the shoulder. And I remember the time thinking, that's crazy. That's magical, like that badly. And then through my, developing myself and understanding things in the systems approach to body and how everything's interconnected. Paul Chek is the guy that really opened me up to that in the late 90s. I remember going to see, I was like the man. I think where was I? I was at Fulham, or one of the football clubs at the time, and I went along, proper ego. And Paul Chek starts talking, and I'm like, oh shit. It blew me away. That he was so, still ahead of the game now, but in terms of physical performance, I was like, oh shit, he's talking about the gut and the colon and digestion and pumping and how that's got to do with the hamstrings. I was like, it made my knowledge, made me realize that I was totally incompetent and blind. Let me just bring you up a tweet also that I just posted this morning. This is a little, I need to find out how I can find what I've tweeted. 1 second. So I posted a tweet that was very cool, and now I can't find it. Yeah, so here, I've got it. That's cool. A little bit of live TV, yeah? So Albert Einstein. Now, everyone quotes Albert Einstein. I'm not sure if he said all of these, but this one's called it. As our circle of knowledge expands, so does the circumference of darkness surrounding it. So the more we know, the more we don't know. Beautiful quote. So I understood there that, wow, I thought I knew everything, and then there was just this vastness of things I don't understand. And that's constant, like that hasn't changed. The more I look at things, I'm like, oh wow, look at this, look at this. So I'm very humble with what I really don't know very much in football. That's what I'm saying, but I have some good stories. So there's this football player who they're saying, his shoulder was affecting his hip. Now, I think that player went on to sort that problem out by going to the shoulder. Now, what's interesting is through my studying, I have come to realize that the shoulders and the legs they're part of the same system, and to disconnect them or discount them is embarrassing, really. You know, as I'm talking to you now, if I reach back behind me and if you do that, you tell me what your hip does. I can feel my hip, right arm, my left hip, the hip opens up, and if I have restriction there, it'll stop, and then I have to find it up here to get the full range, and that's when I'm going to hurt here. Or if this is restricted, and let's say I'm going to, like do a free kick, and I have restriction up here, then I have to get the extra length down in the lower limb. So for me, it's obvious. And the reason why I want to bring that up is I've maybe mentioned this before, but my hips have always been an area that I've had tightness, and so it's one of the areas that I used to focus on when stretching. And then through studying with Gary Gray, who's Michael Jordan's physical therapist, and his understanding of the chain biomechanics of the chain is just, I'll never know as much as him, but I can kind of glean some stuff from him. And he was saying, if your hips are tight or there's problems in the hip, go to the shoulders. Those are his two main hubs. He goes, it's either shoulders or hips. You might get a 3-month-old screaming in the background. Sorry, this is my new office, so gotta do with what you have. So if you want to free the hips, go to the shoulders. And for me, that's something I understood logically, but didn't see it in my own body. And what I've noticed is, if I can't get extension in my hips, if I lack extension, then I checked out the extension in my shoulders and it's completely restricted. So don't necessarily go to the area that you think you have the problem, go somewhere else. So talking about Gary Gray. So Gary Gray, the story I have, he's a lovely guy, excellent training if you ever get a chance to work with him or with a certified trainer. I was talking with him and we were looking at the foot, and he was saying, if you can get a little bit more range, 1-2% in the subtalar joint down at the ankle, that'll free up the foot, and then and then the chain reaction will go up the body. And I remember saying to him, what if it doesn't improve something or other? And he goes, well, just do the opposite. And he laughed. He said, Rob, when sometimes I'm thinking it's this, and then it's not, I can't get results, so I just do the opposite. And it was very humble. He just said, I just do the opposite of what I think it is. So that is something I've come to understand, is sometimes it's too complex a system, and our minds they're just like a pea shooter, at a tank. It's just, the conscious mind processing 23 bits a second, and then the subconscious is millions of bits a second. Like the complexity of the body is just incredible, and don't think you can get it. But so if you've got a restriction down in your hips, go to the shoulders, start opening up the shoulders, and that'll filter down. And this ties in nicely with my Chinese studies and energy studies, because they talk about the shoulders and hips being reciprocals, which is, just turn that off. So left shoulder, right hip, left shoulder. Right shoulder, left hip, right shoulder. So that's like a cross, and the energy is either binary, strong or weak. Now, you might go, oh, energy, that's bullshit. Yeah, that's what I used to think as well. And then I started looking into that and starting getting results and more results, until I got to the point where my results were so good using energy or shifting the energy from weak to strong that I stopped using all my years and years of physical therapy tools and conditioning tools. I just said, I can't do that anymore. It's not useful. I have to do this. But I understand, everyone's where they are. But if you into that, what you can do now is, if you just take your awareness to your shoulders and your hips, and I'm just going to strengthen my hips, but also yours as you're listening to this. You want your left shoulder to be strong to your right hip, and then go to the midline of the body, and right hip back to the left shoulder. That's strong now. Left hip to right shoulder, left hip. So now left shoulder, right hip, left shoulder. I'm getting my dyslexia. Let me just make sure I got that. Right shoulder, left hip, right shoulder, right hip, left shoulder. And now that is strong. So you can do that on a daily basis, is just strengthen the reciprocals, shoulders to hips. That will have a massive impact on your, it's not gonna suddenly you're Usain Bolt, but it's gonna strengthen you. You're gonna feel more balanced, centered and stable. Okay, so I'm gonna start doing those on every video. I just start strengthening you as you watch this, which is kind of cool. So Gary Gray taught me just do the opposite, which I thought was cool. And by the way, talk about someone who's ridiculed. In the, I don't know if it was like 80s, he was asked by the Physical Therapist Association of America to do an article on the Achilles tendon. And so he started looking at it, and he wrote an article called The Achilles Hip. That was the Achilles hip. And he stated and explained how the hip and the Achilles are the same thing. That if you don't work the hip, you can't affect the Achilles. They're the same thing. And they shunned him. They said, no, this is ridiculous. And they didn't publish it. That's one of the stories, you imagine being that far ahead of your understanding. Even now, Gary Gray's you go, most medical teams and physiotherapists, they don't understand the chain and how everything's interrelated. But that you could say on a global level, how everything's interrelated. And I'm not going to go into immune systems and stuff and the world, but we need to understand that everything's is a holographic nature to everything, as within, as without, and everything's interconnected. Yeah. So it's very counterintuitive to understand the body in that respect. So I think I've said enough on that. If you're, just another thing, I wrote it down. It's interesting, central nervous system and the computer, they control what you do with your body. So I think it was, what was his name? The South African endurance scientist. I had his book. There's this scientist in South Africa. He's like the main man when it comes to research on heart rate. And his whole work, he's famous, as I forget his name, he's famous for how the heart rate controls everything, blah, blah. And then he had a realization that he was wrong. And it was central nervous system that was controlling the heart rate. So if you're what he would do is take people to run until they absolutely couldn't go any further. And he found that their heart rate, they could go further, but it was their perception and the central nervous system, their perception of the effort was threat to the system. So the central nervous system shut down the ability to produce more oxygen or something like that. And he went against everything that he'd done, his whole work. He realized he was wrong, and he did it. He came out, and he was completely marginalized. They thought he'd lost his mind. So again, it comes back to perception, and perception, mind, the mind. So the reason why I bring that up is, let's say I do a tennis serve. I take my shoulder back. Now, if you can only go back a certain way, and it locks up. Now, most people go, well, we need to open up in that direction. Now, what you'll come to understand, you don't need to, but there's an opposite and equal movement, right? So you go there and then you go there. Now, it could be that movement, the central nervous system doesn't like. So if it doesn't like this, what do you think it's going to do to that? It's going to stop it because it doesn't want you going there. It's like, whoa, you start going, oh shit, I don't know what's going on with the body. Oh, by the way, when that happens, what happens here? That goes forward. What if the central nervous system doesn't like you doing that? So then, but what if the hip? What if central nervous system doesn't like that hip opening? But what if it's the knee? What if you've got a problem with your toe and it does? Yeah, it's just the whole thing. You can't separate it out. Amazing. So I'm going to stop talking. If you find that, I'm just going to go into more and more stuff. How the body is there, how the mind is there, how your spirit, things outside of you, how you're downloading stuff. Spirit, I kind of talk about generational programs that are coming down. And really, fundamentally, that just forms a triad: body, mind, spirit. Everything's interconnected. You can't separate. Your perception, you've already seen. Let's say your body, if you're walking into a room and there are girls there, and you perceive your value with them as not as high as it should be. What happens to your body language? What happens to your body? Well, it changes. You close down, and so body language guys will go, pull your shoulders back. But the perceived threat is there. So what happens to the rest of the body? Well, you can't have one without the other. You need to resolve the threat, and then the body will relax, and then you come across as high value. Yeah, and then there's the spirit. I worked with a guy recently who had low self-esteem issues, and what he was doing is he was connecting with the women that he was going up to beforehand and picking up on their stuff, and that was freezing him. So it wasn't even his stuff. Now that's where it gets a little bit complicated. Okay, so thanks so much for listening. I'm going to keep talking about this stuff even if no one's listening, because I think it's extremely important and it needs to get out there so people can expand their bubble of unlimitless and enjoy the present moment and enjoy life and be a leader for others and be a leader as a father or as a mother. And if you like the video, please like it and please subscribe to my videos, and you can click to get automatic updates to know when I'm posting. That's really useful and really helpful for me. I really appreciate it. And if you have anything you want to share, comments, stuff, I like those comments as well. I always reply to them, and sometimes I'm like picking up on books and stuff there that is really useful for me, so I appreciate that as well. You guys have guys and girls, I need to come up with another word for that. Everyone, have a great day and talk to you all soon. Hey, what's up everyone? Today I'm going to be talking about physical body, how to free up a certain area by working somewhere else in the body. It's a little counterintuitive, but that comes from my experience and from working with other experts who agree with me. And this is going to be showing you how to work with your own body, how to free it from restrictions. And I'm also going to be doing like a physical strengthening in these videos from now on, just a little short one. So I'm going to be strengthening something for you. You just connect to it. It's the intention that matters, and it'll strengthen your body. So if you think that sounds interesting, you should definitely watch this video.